Across the many decades of comic book stories, both in Marvel and DC, there have been numerous WTF moments. Bane breaking Batman's back, Norman Osborn leading the Avengers, the 90s. These are but a few of the countless events that have managed to shock and delight comic book readers in equal measure. Though, in terms of single years, 2018 has been jam-packed with WTF moments more than most. Whether they be for better or for worse, enjoyable or not, all of them have managed to surprise readers in one way or another. With failed weddings, shock deaths, and even more shocking endings, here are the moments in 2018 where the medium forgot to pull its punches. Needless to say, there are major spoilers from here on in, so if you haven't been keeping up with your monthlies, best look away now. For those who are staying, however, I'm Ewan from What Culture, and here are the 10 biggest what the comic book moments from 2018. Number 10, Wonder Woman Possessed. When you have a team made up of the likes of Zatanna, Swamp Thing, Detective Chimp, and Man-Bat, not to mention Princess Diana of Themyscira herself, you wouldn't have thought that Wonder Woman would be the one to try and destroy all of magic. Well, in the recent Justice League Dark Story arc, dubbed The Witching Hour, the iconic heroine was possessed by the mother of all magic, Hecate, granting Diana immense universe-warping power, with the only caveat being that she couldn't quite control her actions, or that sick guitar riff that plays whenever she's on camera. The character's rampage stretched from Nanda Parbat, the place where poor old Vic Sage did the death in 52, before she went on to desecrate the pantheon of the Greek gods in an attempt to rewrite the rules of magic to suit her own agenda. Thankfully though, Diana has some pretty loyal friends, and with their help she managed to escape Hecate's clutches, but not before some pretty mad events had occurred. Well, not as mad as that time she turned into a pig and Batman had a little sing afterwards, but you get the picture. Number 9, Captain Marvel's New Origin. In Carol Danvers' most recent book, The Life of Captain Marvel, the heroine returns to her childhood home to catch up with her mother and her remaining brother. But trust me when I say the premise isn't nearly as boring as it sounds. The appearance of alien warriors aside, while exploring the house, Carol discovers some old letters which reveal that her father was having an affair with another woman. Though, in the wild world that is Marvel Comics, this isn't much of a shock. What most definitely is, however, is the fact that the woman is actually just Carol's mother, but in her true Kree form, rather than the human disguise that everyone knew her by. Yes, in a classic twist, Carol was revealed to have been half Kree the entire time, with the psych magnetron that supposedly gave her powers only being the catalyst which activated them in the first place. Maybe that's why Jules never lets me talk to Mum anymore. Anyway, this all comes prior to the release of the new film, something which likely prompted the change in the character's mythos. Number 8, Daredevil becomes the mayor of New York City. So, you thought Wilson Fisk being the mayor was insane. Well, think again, true believers. The devil's in charge now. After an attack by the Hand left the supposedly former kingpin of crime in a critical state, and due to an adjustment in regulations by previous administration, the then Deputy Mayor, Matt Murdock, got one heck of a promotion. While being an absolute delight for any readers who had been following Charles Soule's criminally underrated run, with Murdock finally having the upper hand over Fisk, it was a double-edged sword for the devil, with his new position making it harder to get out to the streets and defend his city from the aforementioned Hand. Thankfully though, as seemingly always, Foggy Nelson was there to make sure Matt was able to get his hands dirty, after Murdock appointed him as his new chief of staff. This was all well and good, and though we are all particularly excited for Chip Zdarsky's upcoming Daredevil run, Soules is in major need of appraising. It's been so overlooked, and yet it's been a consistent performer for the House of Ideas since its opening few issues. Definitely check it out if you haven't done so already. Number 7, Cable murders Cable. Sure, Cable has died many a time, but that's the nature of being a superhero, though it's fair to say that not many heroes have been killed by a younger version of themselves. In a recent Extermination event, the younger Cable, finding that the time stream had been disrupted due to the presence of the all-new X-Men, the character deemed that his older self had gotten soft and, as you can see in these livingly selected panels, promptly relieved him of his duty. Following this, the character went on to capture and effectively torture the friends of what would eventually become his parents, not to mention going up against X-Force who, if you didn't know, were the original Cable's best pals. though he seems to have realised that wasn't the best way to go about saving the day and has since teamed up with the aforementioned X-Force and the main X-Team. Number 6. The Purple Daughter. Though the arc featuring this specific story is yet to actually be released physically, this disturbing reveal at the end of Kelly Thompson's first Jessica Jones tale was a shock to be sure. For those of you who know nothing about the character, Jones is a superpowered private eye whose attempt at being a hero ended in probably the most disgusting way possible, with the character having had her life made into a living hell by the mind-controlling and sadistic Purple Man. So, knowing that, it shouldn't come as a major surprise that, when Danielle Cage, Jones's daughter, returned to the apartment that day completely purple, Jones, alongside the reader, was freaked out, to say the very least. This is especially devastating as, along with the torture Jones had to endure over her first encounter with the villain, Danielle's mind was only recently taken in an attempt to get at Jessica by the Purple Man, something which everyone believed to have only been temporary. Number 5. The Justice League worshipped as gods. When the world's Brainiac had imprisoned were released into what is now known as the Ghost Sector, civilizations that hadn't had any off-planet contact for many years were suddenly flung into an ecosystem in which the nearest planet was but a short flight away. As such, when this new branch of Justice League arrived in the area, it was certainly a surprise for both them and the reader to find that Cyborg, Starfire, and Azrael were being worshipped as gods in religions that had seemingly existed for decades, if not longer. The even stranger thing is that the person who called the three of them to the sector is the newest incarnation of Darkseid. Insert obligatory Josh Brown can't pronounce Darkseid joke here. He believes the trio to be the old gods that his race, the new gods, replaced. Needless to say, at only a few issues in, Justice League Odyssey is shaping up to be something special indeed. Number 4. The return of Wolverine changes Laura's codename. The fact that the original Earth-616 incarnation of Logan returned to the land of the living isn't shocking whatsoever, really. It's more just the timing of it. While it's hard to deny that Howlett is one of Marvel's all-time great characters, the character's successor, Laura Kinney, also known as X-23, was really coming into her own as the latest person to take up the mantle of Wolverine. With her solo series, All New Wolverine, as well as her appearances in X-Men Red, she had more than proved herself to be a worthy replacement, with writer Tom Taylor having taken the character to newfound heights during the last couple of years with those respective comics. So, while Logan's return itself may not be surprising in the slightest, the sudden demotion of Laura back to a tag she was given at the start of her life is really just a smack in the face to anyone who had invested in her during the original Wolverine's absence. Number 3. The Wedding. After the catastrophe that was the Spider-Man One More Day story, you would think that comic book writers would have learned their lesson when it comes to superhero marriages, namely letting them happen and not retconning them into obscurity at a later date. Yet, this didn't prove to be the case at all with the 50th issue of Tom King's Batman, which was supposed to see the Bat and Cat tying the knot, but instead saw the latter of the two ditching the former, something which is either very unsatisfying if you wanted to see Bruce finally have some happiness, or a perfect representation of the nature of the pair's relationship. Factor in the rug-sweeping revelation that Bane had been orchestrating everything throughout King's run since the beginning, and Batman number 50 just seemed to reset everything back to normal, exemplifying, perhaps, the cyclical nature of the character, albeit for vastly different reasons than is usually the case. Number 2. The Sanctuary Massacre. The Tom King klaxon is off for a second time, folks, and this time it's for Heroes in Crisis, a book that's about as uplifting as finding out someone has taken a dump in the Martian Manhunter's favourite stash of Oreos. Where this series diverges, however, is the nature of the tragedy, with a large body count taking the place of King's usually slightly less devastating subject matters, despite the obvious pathos found within each of them. The book doesn't take very long to show the reader the harrowing scene either, with Superman discovering the bodies only halfway into the first issue. Though, in traditional Tom King fashion, this is made even more heartbreaking by the fact that all the heroes at Sanctuary were there to get treatment for all their past horrors they had experienced. Instead, all those present just gained a fresh one. Number 1. The ending of Mr. Miracle. As well as being a fantastic conclusion to one of, if not the, best series of 2018, the ending of Mr. Miracle certainly left many with some questions. According to the tweet announcing the comic all the way back in May 2017, Mr. Miracle is set in DC continuity, but the context surrounding where and when the tale is actually set is something of a mystery. There are two main theories that can be derived from simply reading the book, namely that Scott Free has either imagined the whole thing in his dying moments, the character having attempted suicide at the beginning of the story, or he's been unknowingly trapped in a false reality by a fellow new god, Metron. Personally, I think he's stuck in the afterlife and he can choose to escape whenever he wants to. Whether it's heaven or hell is at the reader's discretion.